All right. Think we've got it this time. Can you hear me? Let me see. We're trying this out. It's something brand new. Yep. I'm going to do a live stream on YouTube with my computer. Let us hope that this doesn't come out terrible. I already see the lag happening. It's crazy. My whole system slowing down. All right. There we go. I'm cheating. I'm logging into my own stream to make sure that the audio is working because I always seem to have audio issues. Drives me nuts. Doing something special today. I want it to go over well for you guys. Okay. Loading. Hello. Let me see here. Alright. Yep, audio's good. We're all good. Alright. Hey. This is impressive. Hopefully the video keeps up and we don't start dropping frames and everything. But I have been wanting to do for a little while a history of collectible card games, because I'm something of a TCG nerd. And since it is May the 4th, I figured you guys would enjoy a premiere issue that is Star Wars themed. We've got the old school Star Wars CCG. Now this one was it's only 3 years older. 3 or 4 years older than Magic the Gathering. And this was one of the first ones, one of the babies. Way back when the concept of collectible card games was brand new and Pokemon didn't exist. And, yeah, so I wanted to flip through and show you guys some of these for Star Wars and some of the cool stuff on them. May have to take them out of the sleeves a little bit. They are not in the best of condition because I was 15. And, collectible card games were meant to be played. Oh, come on. Focus. Focus. Come on. I want to see the words Darth Vader in legible text. As I said, we're experimenting. So this is live. I've never done this before with my PC. Of course, right as I get, there we go. Now we're starting to see some better. Okay, I'm gonna modify on the fly. Focus. Bam. Okay, there. Now when I hold the card up, it shouldn't freak out and shift everywhere. Hopefully you guys can read that. Darth Vader with a lightsaber. It's, yeah. Okay. Gather my thoughts. Despite this being live, I want to sound professional. Star Wars CCG came out in that first big boom of collectible card games when everybody and their dog was trying to get a piece of the pie after they saw how successful Magic the Gathering was. A lot of card game or a lot of trading card manufacturers like Score, Fleer, Ultra, they decided to make their own collectible card games like Magic that were just based in their own worlds and fanciful and everything. And I mean, there was a lot of stuff that went on with them. And there were some other companies that went, aha, we have a better idea. Let's use an existing property with existing lore and existing images and make card games that way, because then we don't have to do a bunch of work. So, one of those companies was Decipher, and Decipher was notorious, or maybe not notorious. They were famous. Famous for making collectible card games of people's favorite sci-fi and fantasy properties. They did the Star Wars collectible card game. They did the Star Trek collectible card game. I believe they also did Babylon 5. They tried to cover every avenue of sci-fi fandom. And by far, their most successful attempt was, in fact, the Star Wars collectible card game. This ran for, I think 23 sets, somewhere in that ballpark. The last ones are really, really hard to find, so I don't remember which ones actually got released and which ones did not, because there were some that were in production before the company folded. And so this game rivaled Magic at the time. It was selling as many packs, I think, at the time of the Hoth expansion. I think it was selling as many booster boxes a month as Magic the Gathering was at the time. Didn't fact check that in the comments. Somebody let me know if I'm just, blowing smoke out my butt. But obviously, the big draw to the card game was that you got to play as your favorite characters from Star Wars. It started with a set they called Premiere, because it was like a movie premiere. And it came with a lot of the characters straight out of the gate. A lot of the fan favorites. And Decipher kind of dug themselves into a hole, because when you put all of your favorite characters, all of the favorite characters out first, where's there to go from there? So, for all of you diehard Star Wars fans, the cool thing that they did was they got approval, like so many other authors and artists of the time. They got approval from George Lucas to make lore changes to add to the mythos that is Star Wars. And so up at the top of each one of these cards is a little text box. Sometimes they even had secret hidden rules words in them, which was always fun to go and find. As you can see, I've got Vader, Tarkin, Admiral Mahdi, and it just kind of goes down. Who's stuck in there? Come on, who's stuck? Get out of there. Oh, that's another Mahdi. That was what I was kind of getting to. So as they were able to make and add more lore stuff, and they were able to use the lore boxes to also add rules to the game, they started printing multiple variations of characters. And so you got to do lots of different things and have lots of different abilities with the same character. And I honestly feel like this is what led to, I mean, not directly, but if you play Magic the Gathering at all, you have Planeswalkers. I feel like this may have inspired some of the playstyle of Planeswalkers, that you had these unique characters that did crazy things, and you could have different versions. So you could have more than one Vader in your deck. Now, you couldn't have more than one of a named character on the battlefield at a time. That's what the little dot up there is about. That was the printed limit of the card. So you actually didn't have a limit on what you could play in terms of the number of cards other than the dot. So if the card has one dot, you can only have one of it in the card game. Come on, there's more of you down here somewhere. As you can see, I'm just flipping through all this stuff. You see all these cool cards. I will come back to some of them. Just looking for an example. Why are droids and aliens? Oh my goodness, I've got these so mixed up. Ooh, there they are. I knew I had more Imperial. Where are they? My goodness, I think I've mixed all of my cards up. How terrible of me. Imperial troops, Imperial troops, Imperial troops. Where'd you go? Thought I had these all organized and was all spiffy. Apparently I'm missing a chunk in my dark side. So we'll flip to the light side. Flip to the good guys to show off here. Okay. Do-do-do-do. Down the row, down the row, down the row, just to make a point. Hopefully this is... there we go! Haha. So see, we have Echo Base Trooper, 3 dots. Rebel Scout, 3 dots. That is what limited how many you could play in your deck. So, weaker cards, or more common and generic cards, they didn't have restriction dots. So you could play as many of those in your deck as you wanted. If you wanted to build a deck that was just like nothing but X-Wing fighters, you could do that. I don't have any, I think, in my my light side characters, but there are some cards that only have 2 dots. You're limited to a second copy. And so, yeah, as you see, there's no dot up at the top there on the Rebel Guard. So you can put as many Rebel Guard cards in your deck as you wanted. Now, like almost every card game of the time, and still to this day, thanks to Magic the Gathering, you had a limit of, or not a limit, you had a minimum requirement of 60 cards to your deck. So you could put more than 60 in there if you wanted. Oh, there we go. I even have one of the Naboo Royal Guard. These ones are really hard to find. Anything based on the prequel trilogy in this card game is hard because the company rolled before the, folded before the trilogy was finished. So I think they're all just episode 1 cards. But they had like the Royal Palace of Naboo, they had Queen Amidala, all sorts of fun stuff. And it also brought a new faction into both the dark side and the light side, which was sorely needed at that point in the game. But yeah, that's the other thing I want to point out. So you had faction marks up in the top corner as well. You had the Rebellion, Aliens, which both dark and light side had, and as you saw before, the Royal Naboo Guard, or the Army of Naboo. I don't know what that's called in the card game. I don't actually have an updated rulebook for that edition. I just had someone gift me some 2 packs, 1 pack, and I thought that was like the coolest thing. Might have only been 1. Man, these sleeves are sticky. Not like they've got gunk on them, but just they are. Ha! I love that one. Because he's the multi-eyed alien. I didn't even pick any of them up. So. They have droids as well. I don't know where a bunch of my missing cards have gone. But yeah. Oh! Sorry, looking for something real quick. Ah! Found them. Other box. I should never store them in different boxes. Aliens. Vehicles. So, you had planetary vehicles. So, terrestrial vehicles. You had spacefaring vehicles. Starships. And within starships, you had fighter class and you had capital class. So, you could play the Death Star if you wanted. The Executioner. I mean, you could play a massive Super Star Destroyer too. And I apologize for all the ums. it was a really, really unique and revolutionary idea at the time because there just weren't a lot of ideas in the field yet. And so the way the game worked, the way everything went together, the game was played with locations. You literally laid out a map on your table. So it had an element of like a board game to it. And as you would place these locations, they had to be on the same planet next to each other. So you could travel from site to site on the same planet. And then if you had the star system attached to that planet, or a spaceport. Nope. I want a spaceport. Spaceport. There, spaceport. So, if you had a card that said something like landing platform, which has a docking bay, if it had the special rule docking bay on it, you could take off from there, pay a certain amount of resource, and travel to another star system to help out. And so this card game was not short. It wasn't something like Magic the Gathering where you'd finish a match in 15 to 30 minutes, right? It was the kind of card game where you got really upset with your younger siblings for touching the layout, and the game had been going on for 5 hours. Which I truly believe was the downside to this card, or the death of this card game. The thing that led to its demise. Got these things upside down. Because games would run on. And so tournaments were really difficult to host. One of my favorite arts in the game. It's the Cloud City of Bespin. And so you would have... Clouds was a generic location. You could play it to any system, which didn't make a lot of sense on Tatooine, but, most people all played it to Bespin, and you had clouds in your Bespin decks, and that was about it. So what most people, to speed up the game, did is they limited themselves to building around one system. And the reason that you would want to travel and have a docking bay at that system would be that your opponent would have a different system. And you would play by having a light side deck for one person and a dark side deck for the other. And the common courtesy would be that you would bring one of each and then flip a coin to determine or roll a die, use some randomization effect to figure out which deck you got to play with that time. Which one you were using that match, whether you were the light or the dark side. And that actually worked out really well for people, having the double decks, and then, it made more of your collection viable and valuable. So, even if your opponent had dumped all of this money into making a strong light side deck to take down anyone on the dark side, if he didn't have an equally powerful dark side deck, you had a chance to beat him in the tournament, because each person had to take one deck of each type, or of each side. And so if his dark side deck wasn't as strong, or her dark side deck wasn't as strong as yours, you had as your light side one, your opposing deck, you had a chance to beat them, even if they were stomping everybody with, one of their other decks. So, it made for some interesting interactions, and it certainly flared some tempers at times. I can remember some people getting really upset about it. But really what this card game was for fans of the series. Oh my gosh, that one's in such bad shape. Man, I traded for a lot of my collection. I traded up for a lot of my collection. I would buy bulk from some of my friends, and they would get a whole bunch of, they would buy, spend face value for their cards and get a whole ton of stuff, and then, have all this extra chaff. And I'd pay them like $5 to take their chaff away, and then I would trade to other people that, like me, didn't have everything, didn't have the money to buy everything they ever needed in the game. And I would work my way up. That's why, it was a collectible or a tradable card game. And so some of my cards, the reason I obtained them was because their value was higher, but their condition was lower. And the savvy collector would look at it and be like, oh, well, yeah, this one's trash. And I'd be like, well, I don't have it. Let me have it. And I got a lot of cards, that way too. Sacrificing quality for quantity at that rate. And that left me with... Oh, there's the other one. I'm breaking my chair to try and reach back here and grab it. And there's the dark side. There's the rest of my dark side cards and characters. Awesome. I don't know why I have them in separate boxes. It's a little weird to me. Oh, I remember why. I was cataloging the collection, and these were the ones I had cataloged. Right. So they got their own separate boxes, and eventually they will all be in the separate boxes. So, yeah. The game had a lot of good virtues, but it also had some major, major flaws that made it so that you had to have a diehard fan of the series, Star Wars, and a diehard fan of the card game, Star Wars, to be able to sit down and play it. But as I was just a fan of collectible card games in general, and just a fan of Star Wars in general, the combination of the two just, really worked for me. And I collected up a lot of these things. And as I mentioned before, you've got all the lore blurbs that are on here. And there was a lot of world building that went into this, and there was a lot of cards that had interaction on the battlefield that was based off of the ongoing stories that they were creating for side characters. Like, you had dozens of named Jawas throughout the game. You had different races that may not, or different species that may not have been named in the series per se, that they gave names to and then created characters for. Just people they pulled off the sidelines. They also even got permission to, like this one, dress people up and make their own original images when they started to run out of frames of Star Wars to put onto cards. They produced a lot of cards in a short amount of time. But just about every character, creature, person, suit of armor, everything you could think of in Star Wars, they tried to produce a card for and keep this engine going. I love the number of versions of stormtroopers there are. Like how many stormtroopers there are in this game. It's like you've got your Imperial squad leader, your bike scout trooper, stormtrooper, your basic one, your stormtrooper cadet, which was probably a better shot than the stormtrooper, as we all know well. Sand trooper, snow trooper, Death Star trooper. I mean, these aren't the stormtroopers, but then it gets, you've got the Death Star trooper, the Imperial Trooper Guard, Navy trooper, Imperial gunner, that's another double, HE driver, Imperial pilot. Yeah, they got really granular about what was available to them. And they made a lot of really cool stuff, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of nifty characters that I have seen in Star Wars for decades now that a lot of people just don't even know exist. And, you know, I really enjoyed playing this card game with my friends from school, and especially with my best friend. He went and he would play. We would hang out at each other's house, and we would just play for like 2 days straight. We would stack up my collection, and we would trade off, and we would spend one day playing a game with like every planet and every system, in every site that I had. And then we would trade off, and the next day we would do the other side. So you had your characters, you had your vehicles, and another interesting thing that they put into the game. Well, I guess several of them. I guess I should say, obviously they put in equipment, which I honestly feel helped push Magic the Gathering again towards including equipment in their game. Because this worked essentially exactly how equipment works in Magic the Gathering. You would pay a cost and then use on a subsequent turn, or if you had the resource there immediately, which they called force, you would use your force to deploy this weapon to a person at the same site. So you would deploy it to a site for its cost, and then you would go and you would deploy that weapon to a character. So you had all of these different weapons and armaments that you could use to boost your characters. Now, they didn't have to have them to participate in a battle, but it made them better. And you can see they went as big as putting weapons on starships. You could add missiles, harpoons, boomas. You could add planetary defense cannons. Like, these weapons got big. Artillery lasers. Ewok catapults. Yeah, there was some crazy stuff. Landmines. Gosh, they just had everything. These were horrifying. These were seekers. Seekers were designed to take out your specific characters of your opponent. So any version of Tarkin, you could use this to kill. Who? Toj. Okay. Mahdi. Yeah, you just had all sorts of crazy stuff. You had things like Luke's backpack and Han's toolkit. I loved all the different details. You had the cyborgs from Bespin. You had the cyborgs headgear. You had stuff to add to your vehicles. You had a holograph projector for R2-D2 or any of the other R droids, which they put a lot of in this game. So after equipment, which was kind of a revolutionary idea at the time, using cards to equip to other cards, then just a second, I'm going to see if I can recruit some more viewers. If anybody... Yep, you get some dead air. So yeah, one of the other cool things that they had were interrupts and effects. So these were designed to represent the actions that your characters took, like the really epic things they did during the series, and during the movies. So they had crazy things like the Kessel Run, Yoda's Hope, the cell that you were in. So effects were things that stayed on the board. Interrupts were actions that just happened. So, I even have foil. That was something that was brand new when this game came out. They didn't really do foiling yet. Magic had just started, and Star Wars was like, we need to do this too. But yeah, this card game honestly had a lot of revolutionary ideas that I see in other games that they came out with later. There was a bit of creation creep. They added a lot of different cards into the game. They put a lot of new stuff in. So you had, what were these even called? These purple cards, I'm not even sure I ever even used them in game. But they were plans, essentially. You planned out, and when you followed the plan and accomplished the plan, you got some massive benefit to the game. And then you had Jedi trainings. So you could put Luke, Yoda... Gosh, I can't even remember what the different characters able to do these were, but you placed a bunch of characters from your deck down, and you could train them to be Jedis. So you went through the Jedi tests. Problem was, is they were rare cards, and you had to collect all 9 of them? I think it's like all 9 or all 7 of them before you could complete and make them into a Jedi. Which was just, absolutely crazy to me. Just strange that was a thing at all. You'd kind of expect that you would play a Jedi and that would be a Jedi. They also had locations that were deployed to vehicles. So because you had vehicles that were so large that they had interior locations that were interior places that were so vast that you could technically have a battle inside of them, they produced sites that were just for that. So you had, like, inside the Sandcrawler, the loading bay. Of course, you had all the Death Star locations, but the Death Star was used, it was a planet, it wasn't used as a vehicle like other starships were. I think I only have the one for the light side. Let's see if I've got more for the dark side. They had way bigger vehicles, obviously, if you've watched the series, so. There we go. See, there's more of those purple cards. There we go. Got purple cards. More plans. Ah, there. More. There you go. So we've got like the Super Star Destroyer executors, docking bay, the Holo Theater, the control station, the main corridor, comm station. Like, there's a lot of different locations. And then you had generic Star Destroyer locations. Like, you could just put a launch bay on your Star Destroyer. Now, the problem that this created, the thing that came up with this that I had a personal issue with, would be you could be fighting out a massive battle on these locations. You could go in there, fly off from a docking bay and land on your opponent's docking bay and infiltrate their Star Destroyer to take it down from the inside. And if you're your opponent was particularly conniving, they would get you on their ship. You would devote a lot of resources to trying to beat them on their ship. And then, because this was attached to the vehicle card, they would just detonate it. They would just kill it, and everyone would just be gone. So, yeah, so they would just destroy everything you had because, you can't stop them from targeting their own vehicle. So it became a problem sometimes where you would have somebody being... I mean, and it's a genius idea, honestly. I really do, in hindsight, look at it and be like, that's valid strategy. But, at the time, it's always a feel bad when your opponent goes and just completely annihilates everything that you have. So, yeah. But, yeah. Coruscant just had all of these different scenes and all these different places. And sometimes they added additional art that just made it... It just made it... I don't know how to put it. It made it more interesting to see all these different locations of the world. So collecting these cards wasn't just a matter of collecting them up for the card game, like with Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! It was, you got to learn more about this world that you were already invested in with your toys and with your movies and with everything else that you were purchasing, the comic books from Dark Horse at the time, and then just getting to see all these different scenes that they added, all these unique locations. I mean, most of them were just pulled stills from the movies, but some of them were also totally unique. So, they would pay computer graphics artists like at the level of Industrial Light and Magic, and they would have them create stills for different locations within the movies. And sometimes they would just send a photographer out into the desert and just like or pay a photographer that had done photography that looked alien. They would pay them for licensing the images and putting them into their card game. Oh, I'm trying to find some unique locations. Yeah. Then we got Jabba's Palace, the Droid Workshops, the Endor Bunker. Yep, pictures. They sent someone out into the rainforest, or paid someone who had gone out into the rainforest and just taken pictures, and they were like, "Hey, it's Endor," and I love that about it. And then they had unique locations like the belly of the space slug. So yeah, and then just all of these unique spots. And as the card game progressed and they realized that they needed to speed things up for the use of tournament stuff, they started releasing generic locations too. I want to point those out real quick. So they were just places that you could put on any planet. And they got these... I really don't know if you can see it. They're so tiny. But right up here... Zoom in as close as we can. That little red thing is a diamond. And a diamond meant you were limited to one of it on a location, but that it was generic. So you could put it on any location. So you could put it in a spaceport. You could add a spaceport to a city. And so these were totally unique locations that they had designed. There it is. The big bad itself. The Death Star. One of my favorite locations to play. And they paid digital artists to do different planets for the game too, and to make images for where they were taking place. And one of the things that I always enjoyed was that they went and did locations that were unique within the Star Wars universe that just are not unique. What I would say, they had been mentioned in the Star Wars universe in other works, but no one had ever like really delved deep into them and worked on it. So, like Dantooine. And oh, that's the Dark City, the Dark Side Cloud City. I love the Dark Side Cloud City. Looks so cool. There's the clouds, and that's got 3 diamonds, so you can put 3 clouds to a location. Kashyyyk, where the Wookiees are from. Then you've got Fondor. But yeah, so all sorts of cool stuff. Tatooine, Kessel, Endor. It was just it was a beautiful card game for its time. I mean, it seems clunky now if you're a regular player of lots of different card games. But this was a fantastic attempt at creating something new, and I absolutely loved it. And I know that this was the inaugural run of what I hope to turn into a podcast discussing TCGs. So as an extra bonus, I just want to add in the card game that superseded this one after Decipher went down. Or just before Decipher went down, they made one last attempt to try and save everything using Star Wars, and so they released the Young Jedi card game, which was a very streamlined version of Star Wars collectible card games. So you had all of your people. It's all based on Episode 1. But they did away with a lot of the extra from the Star Wars collectible card games. So you just had the weapons, you had... Well, I guess you still had locations, but they just weren't as important to the game. But they kept the mechanic of light side, dark side. Get it right, brain. And this was a very short-lived thing. It was an attempt to bring new blood into the old game, to bring people... it was an attempt to bring people into the idea of a collectible card game based around Star Wars. And it gave them a chance to like revisit the rules and streamline them a lot. Ooh, I even had Darth Maul Starfighter. Nice. But it was too little too late. Decipher was already hemorrhaging money left and right, from what I understand. And they tanked. Couldn't even find the website a few years later. And they left behind a huge legacy. There are still people who actively play this card game. I have personally purchased cards on eBay that are still demanding high prices. And having scanned part of my collection into eBay to track with their collections beta system, some of these cards hold better value than some of the Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards from the same era. Like they're doing really well, and they are truly scarce. So, you know, if you guys are interested in more on this and like an actual structured video, not just me rambling, something where I've checked facts and done my homework, just let me know and tell me in the comments. Contact me at theguywhosoundsfunny@gmail.com. Let me know if you want to hear anything more about the Star Wars collectible card game and Young Jedi, and I'll definitely go digging deeper and find some of the old information. I've got back issues of Wizard Magazine, Scry, a lot of places where the conversation around collectible card games was happening, and I haven't looked at them in years. I never read them all from cover to cover just because there were card games in them I wasn't interested in. But I would definitely be interested now in going back and look at some of these things for you guys if you want to see them. So if you guys liked this quick little May the 4th live stream attempt at starting a podcast, let me know. And I will start putting my research skills to use and do my homework. I'll come back with something even better than before. We can dig into like why Richard Garfield made Magic the Gathering and why Decipher tanked. You know, there's some interesting things in there. We also have the Harry Potter trading card game, which I know is a little that one's controversial, not for the reasons that you think it is. Like that game that game was doing so well, and then its creator just killed it out of the blue. But that's for another day. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I will catch you on the next one. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.